Hey everybody, welcome in. Today I've got kind of a special episode here, or special segment here on the channel. We are going to be interviewing the manual PvP champion Woodstockwins, or Woodywins, as he's known in game. Personally, I've known him for quite a while, known him for several years now. We've had a lot of epic battles in the past, and I've known him to be one of the most formidable PvP players in the manual scene. So it was a real treat to watch him there in the finals, and I'm excited to kind of give an interview here and kind of pick his brain a bit on the tournament, on his play style, and all that kind of stuff. So Woody, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us how you got into this game of War of the Visions?
Well, first off, JB, thank you for having me. I've wanted to chat with you for a while. You know, as you mentioned at the top there, we've been online buds for a few years at this point. But I don't know if I necessarily have an intro per se for myself. But I know that who would it be? Muhammad Ali, Floyd Mayweather, Ronda Rousey, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Baker, Freddie Mercury, Woodywins, all world champions, man. What do you know?
There you go, legends of the ring. Yeah. So what actually was kind of your first experience with this game? How did you get into the game? How did you get into PvP?
So I got into the game sort of by accident, and this is almost embarrassing, but I was playing some nonsensical game on my phone that I had downloaded for some trip I was going on, so I could have something to do on the airplane. And it was this terrible, like, scrolling, fighting demoness game. I don't know, it was terrible. I couldn't even tell you the name of it if I tried. And, you know, like most games, they have advertisements that, you know, they force you to watch. And lo and behold, as I happen to have this stupid app open on my phone one day, an advertisement for War of the Visions popped up, and I was like, wait a second. Final Fantasy Tactics is like one of my all-time favorites. What is this? And it was, you know, probably like 2 or so days after the launch of the game, and I just, from that point on, I was in.
You're hooked.
I was hooked. I mean, I'd never played a gacha before prior to that, so I had no idea what world I was delving into.
So when you downloaded the game, was it pretty quick that you actually got into and started using free match and the different PvP modes there, like for manual in specific?
No, I was a little intimidated at first because I had no idea what the heck I was doing. The early stages of the game were kind of the Wild West in terms of like unit levels, right? You know, you had some people who had real quick got to, I don't even remember what it was, 79, 89 level units, and I was, you know, probably had 64 or some odd weird number of some hodgepodge of units, because I'd never watched a re-roll guide. I didn't know what any of that was. I just downloaded and go.
Just got in there, yeah.
And just figured it out, and of course I got destroyed every time I did any of it, but was in the official Discord channel and came across some random guild, the Vision Seekers, which I'm now a sub-leader of, however many years later. And it just, from that moment on, you know, there was just this great community of folks that knew so much about kind of the gacha world at large. And they shared some knowledge with me. And once I, you know, kind of got shown the light a little bit, I just took it and ran, just enthralled by it, loved every second, and just slowly got better over a long time. I think first couple of class matches, I was, I don't know, ranked 200 plus, you know, just kind of good, but not competing by any sense.
Of course, back then we had class matches every single month. So it was, I think, like the manual scene and free match in particular, that was kind of its height, like during that first year. There really hasn't been that many changes at all to manual. It's kind of somewhat dormant. They haven't done much development or added many quality of life things to manual. Is there any specific quality of life for that particular mode that is something that you've thought about it and wants for it in specific?
I mean, I haven't thought too deeply about it, but just kind of off the top of my head here, the low-hanging fruit is obviously give us the 5 times medals that the Japanese server has for free match. I think just that alone would encourage, you know, more people to jump into it. maybe have some kind of weekly or monthly reward system, like how we do with Arena, to incentivize people to regularly check in. And it doesn't even have to be anything rewards wise that's overly crazy, right? Like put a one rainbow ball in there, or 25 of each elemental fragment of thought and awakening prism. Just something that would help players develop their units.
Even some more like interesting things in the shop, like you could put 10 pull tickets, you could put maybe a few shards, maybe you can grind 20 or 30 transcendent mind spheres for a month, if you can do some matches. It's so easy. They could very easily incentivize people to go in there and play the mode, because right now, because the gear that that we've had since the beginning, the platinum armor, the Hermes sandals, they just take so long to grind that people don't even bother at this point, other than the kind of old school people who've been doing it since the beginning and are still trying. But I mean, when you think about it, we're approaching 4 years into the game, and to have one piece of gear to show for my efforts granted, I don't do it every single day, but I've been fairly active. I've done all the class matches, I've done all even the quick picks, and it's time for more currency. Certainly the 15 times medals that we had recently was like a lightning bolt to the currency that I was able to get like a recipe per day during that week, which was nice.
They need to do something with it. It's, in my opinion, the best content in the game, or at least the most engaging, where I feel like if I'm doing manual PvP, like I have to shut out all the noise in my life and be present in this exact moment and be competing against this player across the battlefield from me, and nothing else matters in that particular moment. And I feel like that's really what gaming at its core, that's the most valuable experience that I think one can gain from gaming in general.
I think it's nice just it's a different way to engage with the game. Myself, similar to you, like I kind of initially got into manual as well because I was frustrated with the AI. We had much less tuning options back then. We couldn't turn off abilities and things like that. So the AI was much harder to tame back then. But yeah, that's how I got into it. The auto side I kind of grew into over time and enjoy that for what it is. But there's nothing like manual in terms of like getting the blood flowing in those like tough matches. And like I said, it's just a different way to engage with the game. It's nice having the option. I'm glad it's still there. We just want maybe something a little bit more forward, maybe a little bit more attention to it than it has been getting over the past few years. Like many people saw, you were the winner of that manual tournament. What was your sort of overall opinion, kind of coming out of the tournament, being heavily involved with it? What was your opinion on the tournament itself for both manual and auto, if you were spectating those as well?
Yeah, I spectated the auto. Opinion is in no particular order, but it would have been nice if I feel like they made it too involved and too complicated, and the barriers to entry were too great, in that you had to enter a lottery to get in. So there were tons of players who are, frankly, quite better than I am, that just didn't even get an opportunity to compete because their number wasn't drawn in the lottery, right? And that is what it is. I understand, but I feel like they could have done some kind of non-streamed play-in version, or made class match rankings matter for something. They're obviously tracking it, and congrats to you on landing in the top 10 class match wins of all time. But point being is that they do track those things. So, they could have curated this list and made it larger and really tried to get the best of the best into the tournament. And I understand they went lottery because that's the most quote unquote fair play, but trying to crown a champion here, not necessarily pick daisies with all your buddies.
I was a little bit disappointed that within that final qualifier rounds, there was like 5 or 6 people that got a second opportunity in that final round, whereas I definitely had put my name in the hat, and I know that there was others as well that hadn't gotten selected yet. So I was just surprised to see a bunch of people getting a second opportunity over, folks that hadn't, gotten a chance yet. So that was one of my main disappointments, in terms of the selections.
I will say, in defense of how they did that, they did brand the final auto and manual qualifying round as the quote second chance tournament. So I do think it was kind of intended for all of the participants of the previous three to have that second opportunity to enter back into it. But if they're going to do that, I feel like that doesn't mean you have to stream all of them, or you know what, record them, chop them all up, and just let R&J shoutcast a recording of it. Because does it really matter if it's quote unquote live in that sense? Like, they could just as easily have these pre-recorded and just do either the semifinals and finals as true live events.
I agree. I don't know how much of a value add it was for actually doing it live. I think that there is a certain excitement to it when in the final situation, like you mentioned, but the semis and the quarter, all that other stuff, I don't know necessarily how much of a value add it is to do it live, because we saw a lot of like the hiccups and the disconnects and things like that. It could have been smoothed out. The time in between the matches could have been smoothed out to lessen the overall length of the stream and maybe keep people engaged.
And if they could get a second streaming or spectating client going, so that if one crashes, they can just quickly pop over to the other one. I mean, that would do so much if they had to do this live. That would really, cause, I don't know, it just feels like it left a bad taste in my mouth, seeing like, oh, the match crashed and now we just have to hear who won. It's not in the spirit of it.
So, I mean, kind of on that same notes, in terms of like the map choices and the rule choices, like the cost limitations, what was your feeling on sort of the restrictions and selections that they made with that stuff?
So I loved the cost. If anything, it might have even gone cheaper, maybe 220, 210, but 230 was totally acceptable, fair, middle ground. Absolutely not a fan of Quicken class matches. So having Quicken banned was just, perfect in my mind. The map choice for all of the qualifying tournaments, I thought were adequate. No complaints whatsoever about any of those. However, the finals map was just so bad. It really made the Bart's double gunner cheese strategy. It's too easy to run that strategy on that map. It's too strong.
And we did see a little bit of that in the qualifiers as well. Once some of the later qualifiers, once Saul was in the game, that's certainly one way to kind of get at that Bard strategy. It's one thing about manual that maybe folks who don't play it can pick up. There's generally certain strategies and play styles that will be just innately better, depending on the map. And traditionally, in manual especially, archer play has always been very, very strong, much stronger than it is on the auto PvP side. Just because, the AI isn't constantly, moving those archers up, and you can kind of sit back and kind of let the game come to you. But Bart's being there and kind of getting that huge follow-up damage has really been one of the stronger like new play styles that's been added into manual over the past year. So definitely it's a force to be reckoned with.
I would be very happy if it was not part of the game, to be brutally honest, but it's in there. You have to deal with it. So it is what it is, I guess.
I mean, even in auto, it can be very strong. But it seems like when it's within a cost limitation, I think that's where it shines even higher, just because that's when you have all these low quality units coming in, and that follow-up, can often one-shot or do heavy damage on, those lower quality units. So in terms of your preparation for the tournaments, can you talk a little bit about what you did earlier on in the qualifying rounds, and then maybe how that changed at all, once you got into the finals?
But I remember just doing scrims with a few buds, Astil and Sykes, namely, who are constantly at the top of the class match leaderboards. They certainly, I mean, I couldn't thank them enough for the coaching and the knowledge share that they gave me. And then a guildie who also happens to be a really good friend of mine in the real world, Kiyoshi. The number of matches where he just allowed himself to be my punching bag of just trying out different and funky combinations that, tons of iterations that never saw the light of day. But, just always being willing to hop in a match late at night, middle of the workday, during lunch or whatever, just hopping in for 10 minutes. But, hey, I want to test this out. I have this theory. And so you just hone these different teams through that process. In the finals, I took it up a notch in that, we had film on everybody, because everybody had a recorded qualifying round. And I did a really deep dive into trying to understand what types of compositions both Urza and Aresh were going to bring. If you go back and watch the qualifiers and then watch their teams in the finals, while it's not a perfect match by any means, there's definitely a correlation there.
So kind of going back to like the shoutcasting and things, a number of times during that tournament, I know Orange kind of was describing you as more of a patient player and letting the game come to you. And I know personally that's something I've always observed about your play style. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to the game?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever truly considered myself to be specifically patient, but I can see how that came through. I mean, I know I had some matches where it was over before it began. So it really just kind of depends on the map, the team you're running, the team you're up against, all of those different factors kind of meld into this strategy for that given battle. But I do say that I like to have a planned approach.
I think that's one aspect of manual that does make it a little bit more challenging to watch for like the casual viewer or folks that don't engage with that manual play. They don't necessarily understand that sometimes sitting back and letting the game come to you is the best play that you can make, and often it is, because you can gather information during that time. You can let the opponent make a mistake while you're kind of then able to capitalize on it and pounce on it. But from like a viewing angle, I can definitely see that maybe they don't understand that nuance of what maybe is happening during those times, or maybe it's a little bit slower to watch because it is more of like a chess type situation happening at that moment.
Yeah, and I don't want this to come across as me saying anything negative about Orange, because I absolutely love what he brings to the WoTV community at large. I think he's great at shoutcasting. So keep this in the back of your mind as I say this, in that I would expect or want the shoutcasters to describe that nuance as it's happening, so that it can then be communicated to the audience of, this is why they may not want to rush in at this particular moment. This is them setting up their keen blade approach, or their haste approach, or their status effect approach, whatever the strategy that team appears or has at its disposal to use. Which, if I'm looking and watching my opponent, that's exactly what I'm analyzing as a player, right? Like, how are they setting up? What are their potential engage options? Can they support through a poking strategy from afar? That's what I would expect the shoutcaster to inform and educate the audience, so that they can appreciate that nuance and that strategy that is being deployed by the participants.
I've always likened it towards like, you look at something like baseball, it's a very slow and methodical game. And when you actually look at the individual plays, there is a lot of strategy behind it that maybe doesn't necessarily come across to people who don't play the game, or don't play it at a high level or whatever. But, in any baseball game, you have generally two casters. You have somebody that is doing the play-by-play as the action happens, and often there's very long links in between that action. And then you have the color guy who's analyzing the plays, maybe the X's and O's and things like that, to kind of fill in those gaps. So I think that the best approach would be to try to tackle it like that, and have like a two-tier approach where Orange, like you said, he's an incredible shoutcaster when it comes to the individual play-by-plays. And when you're doing that and engaged in that, I think it's harder to do the analysis of what's happening. Maybe it's a bit more nuanced in its strategy at the same time. I can't imagine trying to do both at the same time, to be honest with you.
And again, just want to reiterate, so much respect for R&J and the craft that he's honed doing that shoutcasting. And I would absolutely echo the sentiment that you just laid down there. And I know I certainly couldn't do what he does, so tons of respect sent his way. But I guess this is my way of saying that we got to get you on those streams, yeah?
Hey, I'm available. I would do it.
For sure. I know you've already done so much for the PvP community at large, but Gumi, if you're listening, let's get JB in there.
So kind of going back to those matches and kind of particularly against Urza Rage, who you went up against in the finals. Can you walk us maybe a little bit into your mindset during those finals matches, especially after you had kind of lost that set against him in the round robin?
Yeah, I actually went in with a ton of confidence in that the to touch on the three losses real quick. The first one, I had a bunch of 50-50 shots, kill shots on his water evade, just flat out miss. Because my Bradley was north of 400 accuracy, so I mean he was hyper built to handle evade, and so with his boosted chances, I was swinging, and obviously I had a few very fortunate reflexes in there that could have potentially swung it back in my direction, but there was a ton of kind of negative RNG that hit me in that. And that's not to take anything away from him. He had a very creative water evade team, and RNG is absolutely part of the game. So I'm not trying to diminish anything at all about his team. But the fact that it, in my mind, felt like it was just bad luck and not some fundamental change that needed to happen in the middle of this match or in the middle of this series, I felt pretty confident going into the finals match against him. But I think what really the deciding factor is in the very first match, I called his bluff in a sense, in that I knew that he knew that the water team, evade team, was giving me trouble. So if I were him, I would not have run the water evade team in that very first match, which he didn't. And so I said, okay, well, if I'm not going to do that, and I have a ton of respect for this player as a player, I'm going to assume that he's not going to do it either. And sure enough, he trotted out the dark team. Who was it? Stern, Steph, and Naya. And
which was a team he had run in the qualifying rounds before.
Yeah, precisely. So I thought it might be this Glassy team, but that dark team is almost the exact same concept of a team, right? Like Glassy's the bruiser, so Glassy and Sephiroth are kind of interchangeable in that role as the bruiser DPS. And then you've got your hyper speed jumping unit in Stern or Zidane, and then who is his third? Naya or Slime, I think it was in the Wind team, as running support. So I mean, you've got carbon copy idea of a team just with different units there. And so I chose the Bart's team because A, I pumped extra accuracy into it, so I knew if he did happen to bring the evade team, I could at least have a chance against it. But B, I wanted to put him on the back foot early after maybe coming in with a little more confidence on his side after going 3-0 against me in the qualifying round and the round robin round. So I wanted to just switch it up and go left when he thought I was going right.
I think that exact dynamic, the human component to live PvP, is precisely what makes it so exciting and engaging. And I'm sure your blood was pumping during those matches. I'm sure his was as well. You actually are fighting for that big prize, and there's the stress surrounding that, and kind of getting so far and wanting to finally get that recognition. So it certainly was a ton of fun to watch. But how did it feel to actually take that down and win that? And what are your plans with that 100K Visior? And have you actually gotten it yet?
I have gotten it. It's My account is now up to, I think, 107 total viz, 107,000.
There you go.
So I definitely bled the resources dry in advance of the tournament, which I think any and all players probably did, right? Like you want to make that bet on yourself, and if you're not saving your resources for this type of moment, then what are you saving them for? So I don't have any specific plans for it. I don't. It still doesn't even feel like it's there, because this was such a draining experience, from the number of hours of preparation that went into it to the elation and excitement of taking it down and going through that bit of a roller coaster 3-0, 0-3, 3-0 finals, that it felt like a relief, I think, more than anything else. This was so stressful. I'm really glad it's over. I had a ton of fun doing it, but thank goodness we can take a breath now.
Yep,
And
take a break and wait for the next one. Flash the title and rest on the laurels for now.
yeah, title still hasn't shown up. That's the Viz did, but the title I'm still waiting on. So I'm running that class of my own title that I know you also happen to be flying that banner at the moment.
They're still handcrafting it for you.
Putting the pixels together as we speak.
Yeah. So, any words of advice for folks out there that maybe want to try to learn manual, or maybe want to, get in there and have a go at it, or maybe want to join the tournament next year? Any words of advice for those folks?
Yeah, just get out there and do it, and seek out competition that is stronger than you, and be secure in yourself in losing matches. Just playing against experienced players, and just ask questions, and try to formulate your teams with intention of, how am I going to, what are my engage tactics going to be? What are my defenses? Do I have a support? Am I going all in on attack? Try to formulate these teams in a specific way, and then use those teams against really experienced players who I guarantee you are going to be more than willing to participate in scrims or free matches with you, because we all want a healthy PvP scene at large. Just don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to lose a few matches until it starts to click, and then you'll see your win rate will start picking up, and you'll get that excitement, and then the game slows down, as they say.
Yeah, I can't agree more with all of that. And we do have a live PvP Discord. I have the link to it in all my videos. I'll have it in the description of this one as well. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, if you want to get into manual, maybe try your hands in the next tournament, or maybe you just want to try the next CM in manual mode, come join us, come hang out, ask questions, ask for scrims, etc. There's plenty of us in there that are more than willing to help. So any last shout outs, Woody, today as we wrap things up here?
One in particular, I got to, and I felt terrible about this shortly after the official live stream. I forgot to shout out my boy Adem, who helped me scrim and prepare for the tournament. And I'd be remiss if I didn't shout his name out and show him the love and appreciation that he deserves for helping me out in preparing for the tournament. But the Vision Seeker Guild, which is the guild I'm a part of, I got to show my love to them, and my other sparring partners, as I mentioned earlier on, Kiyoshi, Sykes, and Still, really helped me a ton throughout the whole process. So shout out you, JB, for putting on your unofficial tournaments, and doing all that you do for the PvP community. I can't thank you enough for all the countless hours that I'm sure none of us ever actually see, but I know you're there grinding away, putting together these review videos, and for having me on to talk about the tournament. So thank you, and shout out you.
I appreciate that, definitely. really enjoyed the tournaments. I enjoyed watching you, and 100% deserved, former CM winner yourself. So yeah, I had a blast watching that tournament, and I do hope that they continue them. I feel like that there was enough engagements there that I hope to see them continue on, and I hope Manuel is going to be included for 2024 as well. So I want to thank you for kind of coming on and doing this interview. It's not something that I've really ever done on the channel before, but I did enjoy doing it, and hopefully the viewers out there, hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. And thanks again for coming on.
Cheers, brother. Appreciate it.